Jago and Julian. And again, thank you very much for joining in. So the objective of this panel discussion basically is to, for our ECE early career scholars around the globe to gain insight and guidance and practical steps for transitioning from academia to consultants roles and research scientist roles. So we will dive straight into the questions. I think because of time, we wanted to do certain activities. So I'll pass it on to you.
Sounds good. David, are you going to get us started with the introduction icebreaker?
Yeah, I actually thought maybe due to time we skip that.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, because we are 20 minutes past.
Right. And is Diogo coming?
I've reached out, he's not responding. So if he joins, he'll find us midway.
All right. Then I can get us started with a question that we put together. So unfortunately, Jillian, you will have to be alone for a while answering these questions. So my first question is, I know you just introduced yourself, but can you briefly talk about your current role outside of academia and what led you to pursue this current career path?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, like I said, I work for a consulting company. There are hundreds of contracts and projects that my company has and are constantly trying to win. So, oh, are we able to turn on our camera now? Let me try.
I think so.
Okay, there we go. There we go. I apologize. I am using my phone, so it's a little wobbly. I also have my notes on my laptop, so I'll be looking up and down. So like I said, for my company, we have hundreds of contracts that we're working on. So the easiest way to describe my job is program evaluation. So the day-to-day job that I perform is related to evaluating programs, projects, whether they are effectively performing their job and achieving the goals that the my client has set out for them. So I lead an interdisciplinary team of qualitative and quantitative researchers in designing, planning, and executing evaluation, assessing the program impact, and also return on investment. And I know you also asked the second question or a sub-question, what led me to pursue this path? I would say I wanted to see the impact of my work. When I was a PhD student, I felt the research work I do was a little bit of removed or disconnected with the world. I'm not saying all academic research is like that, but that's how I felt when I was a grad student. So I wanted to pursue a career that would allow me to see more of an impact of the work I do. So I feel with consulting, or at least with the project I'm working on right now, my client is CMS, which stands for Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So one of the biggest public health insurance in America. The clients are not my clients, but my client's client, Medicare or Medicaid beneficiaries. I feel like the work I do, I can actually see it come to fruition. So that's the biggest motivation for me to kind of pivot from a research or academia research to a applied practical research world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that you do, when you were in grad school, you study children or people of developmental stages. So I wonder how did you transfer your research skills into a different setting?
I would say research skills is one thing I learned in grad school, right? So I consider that as a hard skill that I would say majority of the PhD students are acquiring, are gaining through their PhD training. Research skills, obviously, when I was a grad student, the subject I was learning was more related to developmental psychology, to emerging adulthood was the phase that I studied, that I focused on. But I also had clinical experience with children, infants and toddlers and their parents. So all these skills are pretty transferable, right? Even though I studied psychology, but moving the research methodology skills that I gained, or the statistical and analytical skills I gained, I can easily transfer it to a different subject. It may take me some time to warm up to the subject, right? So for right now, public health, it's not something I studied as an undergrad or my grad school, but it is something that from day-to-day work, you can pick up, you can learn. You learn how billing works, right? Providers, they bill for insurance, and those things, it doesn't require you 5 or 6 years of schooling to understand that those are things like you can slowly pick up as you work. But research skills are something that takes a lot longer to be trained on, and that's like a fundamental skill set that you have in your pocket, and you can just take it out like a tool that you use to solving problems, to managing client relationship, all that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but going back to your question, how do I transfer my research skills? I would say see that as a toolkit that you have, and you know what tool to use. You know when to use a screwdriver. You know when to use a plier when a certain part of appliance break down. So as long as you have that as a good, you have a good fundamental understanding of research method, I don't see that as a problem, like transferring it from academia research to consultancy or other applied research world.
That's really great to hear. It's actually a great segue to my next question. So I was going to ask, what were some challenges you faced when transitioning from academia to your current career path? How do you overcome them? But it sounds like you had a pretty smooth transition.
Smooth transition might be an overstatement. I wouldn't say it is very smooth. But I think I consider myself as fortunate enough to have encountered people along the way to prepare me for this transition. What are some of the challenges that I encountered? I think at the very beginning, when I was looking for jobs, of course, lack of experience would be one of them, even though I've said a lot of the research skills are transferable. But when it comes to your resume, it was very clear on my resume, all of my experience, whether it's research related or like my management experience or program evaluation experience, were very short and limited to a school setting. But I did a lot of networking. I heard from a lot of people who transitioned from their, PhD academia to working in a corporate. So their advices and this kind of connection really helped. And after I started working, I think one of the challenges that I encountered and took me some time to kind of get out of was a type of mindset that I adopted when I was a grad student. A lot of the focus was on looking for significant findings, right? What would get me to a significant, P smaller than 0.05? We try moderation, mediation. We'll try different models. We try to add a covariate, things like that. But when it came to, I can't speak for all, applied research world, but at least when it came to my current project, we're not trying to find a significant finding. We're just trying to present the finding. If there's no significant impact of the program, I have to tell my client, hey, you just spent $3 million on this program, which we did not find an impact. That's the truth. But that's not the end of it. What are the recommendations? Right? Why was there no so that qualitative came together. It was to say there's no come in here and fill in the story and provide some explanation or contextual explanations, right? And then given that, what is the recommendation? What do I recommend my clients to do? What's the next step? What do you think you've been doing well? But what do I think are not working that contribute to the lack of impact? So that really kind of took me some time to realize, oh, we are not going after p smaller than 0.05. It's not, then that's the truth. Then that's what we present. But more importantly, how to problem solve, how to fix that. So this is something, I think, a type of skill I didn't necessarily acquire. But again, I think it's a mindset. Once you realize, okay, that's not the goal, that's not what you're pursuing, and instead this is what you're going at, then you switch to a different mindset. Instead of trying to fix the model to find a significant findings, you go from a different angle. So that's pretty eye-opening for me. Kind of going off a tangent here, but I think it speaks to the challenges that I encountered.
I love that. That's wonderful. I believe we have a question in the chat. Do we want to get to that later? Oh, no, it's not a question. Okay. So you mentioned job hunting, which is great, because that's my next question. So you mentioned networking and talking to people who have already transitioned outside of academia. But how else did you go about exploring and research non-academic career options during your academic training?
So I would say when I was a grad student, my husband, he already started working at a consulting company. So I kind of get to see a little bit of what he does on a day-to-day basis. So that was before COVID, but he had the luxury of working at home 2 days a week. So I kind of get to see a little bit of what he and his team are doing. And he also sees the type of research work I do. So he would say, he knew at the time I wanted to become a professor and wanted to pursue academia. But he said, if that ever doesn't work out, just so you know, what you're doing now, our company, are always looking for this type of talents and skill set. So at that time, it kind of planted a little seed in my head, knowing, okay, what I am doing now, the 5 years, 6 years of PhD is not just limiting me to being a professor or work at a research institution. There are other, options out there. And he, along with the other people that I networked with, was a great resource for me when I was looking for jobs. Sorry, I'm trying to go back to your question. You said besides the people that I had networked with, what are other?
How did you go about exploring and researching non-academic options?
Okay. I would say I still have to go back to network. I know it's a word that we say all the time, right? Even when I was a grad student, when we went to conferences, my mentor would always tell me, network with people. But I feel like it was such an empty word until I started looking for jobs. Network is such a important step in job hunting, or even before you start looking for jobs, when you're kind of thinking about your career options, career aspiration. I think network is a really important thing to do. So what I did was I basically just kind of cold calling people on LinkedIn, or I actually first started with people I knew, people in my own circle. When I was an undergrad at UCLA, I was working at a research lab, and there were PhD students at that time who were, many years ahead of me, but who now working at Google, working at Facebook, at big corporate. So I just reached out to them and be like, hi, my name is so and so. I was an undergrad student when you were a PhD student at UCLA. You may not remember me, but right now I am, a fifth year PhD student studying psychology at UMBC. I would like to pick your brain about how you transitioned from studying developmental psychology at Dr. So-and-so's lab to now working at Google. Do you mind, giving me 30 minutes of your time and telling me what you're doing? Like at that time, I didn't even know too much about what they're doing at Google, right? Tell me a little bit about what you do at Google, and then do you like it? Very similar to the questions you're asking me today was the things that I asked them. And a lot of them are generous enough to give me some time to either chat with me online or just give me a call for 30 minutes. And then after I introduce my background, my interests to them, they would be like, oh, you know what? I have a colleague who had a more similar background or experience with you. Let me connect you with them. So this person would connect me with 2 other people, and these 2 other people connect me with 4 other people. So this kind of really is a network, like become a big net. So I can tell you easily through that, one person probably connected me with 4 other layers of connections, and that really just expanded. And along the way, I've learned so much about why other people are switching. What are some of the things that I could kind of adopt in my pivoting process? So that was really helpful. And going back to your question about how did I search about these opportunities? I mean, they are a big resource. They would tell me, Google has this internship. If you are a 4th year PhD student, not your last year, that's one of the key things. They have a paid internship that you can still remain as a PhD student doing your dissertation or whatever, but you get paid to intern at Google, help them develop a product or something. And then the payback is after you leave that internship, you have to go back to your PhD program to finish. So you still had to have 1 year left in your program when you applied. That disqualified me when I found out about that information. But that's an example of the tunnel of information that I got from these connections.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And Yao, I'm relying on you to tell me to like, oh, you're going too long for this question. We gotta switch to the next one because I know we started late. So I can go on and on. You need to tell me when to stop.
Will do. You did great. And I think you answered some of my other questions, so we can cut down some questions. So you're good for now.
Sure.
So I think we can skip the question about networking because you did a really good job explaining everything. And so we can talk about next question is, can you share any resources or programs that early career scholars can access to explore non-academic career paths or gain relevant experience?
I personally don't have too many resources just off the top of my head. But one resource I utilized was the Career Center at my school. So my last 2 years or 1.5 year of grad school was spent during the pandemic. So I didn't really get to experience like walk into the Career Center office and sit down with a counselor and talk through that. But the virtual office visits still helped a lot. So I connected with them. They helped me work on my resume, helped me fix my LinkedIn profile, and some tips on job searching, like career fair, things like that. So I would say that's a good kind of first step if you don't have a resume that's already polished, if you don't know too much about job searching. Definitely check out the career center at your school. You may not even know about the existence of them because a lot of PhD students are very head down in their work, right? I didn't even know a lot of the buildings on campus because I was only in the psychology building, pretty much only on the floor that I need to go onto. But definitely, check them out. And then once you advance to a more prepared stage of job hunting, like you already have your resume prepared, you already kind of have a elevator speech about yourself, how to introduce yourself, then I would say LinkedIn is definitely a good platform. That's what I used a lot. I basically just go to LinkedIn. First of all, your LinkedIn profile needs to be good enough because people will check you out. And if your LinkedIn profile isn't ready, that is a waste of opportunity to present yourself to strangers. There are a lot of job hunters or recruiters on LinkedIn, and their job is to recruit people. Like their job is to find people on LinkedIn or elsewhere. I keep saying LinkedIn, but using that as a general name for all these job hunting platforms. There are recruiters who are looking for people without speaking to you. They are just looking at your experience and they will reach out and be like, hey, we have a position that we think your skill set would be a perfect. Can I speak to you? So make sure that is ready. And then I go to LinkedIn, I kind of just filter out the companies I want to work at, right? I'm using big names that people are all familiar with. So say Amazon, right? Say Google, right? Or there's a specific company that you want to work at. Filter that as one of the filter, and then maybe use location as another filter. So I lived in Washington, D.C., so I used D.C. or Maryland, Virginia as a filter. And then you can use another filter, maybe your school, right? Because people tend to open up to people who have some sort of connection with them. So when I reached out to people, I usually just say, hi, I am a fellow alum from this school. That's one commonality between us, and that kind of give me a foot in the door type of thing. So I get their attention. Maybe they want to help a fellow alum from the same school who had a similar experience with them. So that's also another, I would say, all these job hunting platform is a good resource. I may not be the best person to answer this question because I feel like I was a little limited in the resources I had. So Career Center and LinkedIn are pretty much the only two. But then I also told you I had my husband who already worked in a corporate world, and I basically used him as a big resource. So if you have someone in your circle, maybe it's a grad student who were in the same program as you, who graduated. Maybe it's your, I don't know, a close friend or someone in your family who can give you advice. Definitely utilize that as well.
That's great. So I think due to time, I only have one last question before we go to the Q&A session. But
Sure.
So I think, okay. How does the hiring process differ in non-academic settings and compared to academia? And are there any specific skills or experience that employers look for?
I don't really know. When I saw this question, I was like, I don't really know how different they would be because I didn't really go through academia job hunting process, right? All I knew was grad school application, PhD program, interview process. And when I was a grad student, I did see some people who applied to be a professor at UMBC, right? We sat on their lectures, what is it called, guest lecture, or
Job talk.
job talk. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So things like that. So I know a little bit, but I don't think it would be dramatically different. I think one thing that's similar is there are multiple phases, right? It's not a one-time interview. You talk to one person and boom, it's done. Chances are, whether it's academia or non-academia jobs, you will speak to multiple people. One person might be at a leadership level. One person might be your direct job lead. If you got hired, that person would be like your supervisor and overlooking your day-to-day work. So I would say multiple stages. That's pretty similar. So I probably can't speak too much about the differences between the job hunting or job application interview process. But I think you also asked about what are some skills that these jobs or roles are looking for. I think if you look at those job descriptions, a lot of them would say, oh, you need to have, there's an education requirement, right? I think for a PhD, like we're pretty much on the top. You can't really go much beyond that. There is a work experience requirement. A lot of times it might say 3 to 5 years or even more. I think one thing I want to point out about that is don't let the number steer you away. Don't shy away from a job position just because it says 5 years of experience and you are still in grad school. Think about all the skills that you have picked up along the way, right? We, as grad students, a lot of times outside of doing research, are doing a lot of management work. Can't speak for other labs, but at least for my lab, yeah, we came from the same research lab. There are a lot of time management skills that you picked up along the way. You grad students, you're taking courses, you're doing your own research, you're writing your dissertation, you're also being a TA. That was a 20-hour per week commitment. You're also doing 10 or 15 hours of lab work. And beyond that, you are a person, right? Some grad student might be a mother, a father, taking care of, other dependent. There are a lot of things you're juggling. So don't undersell your time management skill. When I see someone, a new hire that has a PhD, immediately I know this person is likely to be good at managing time and managing skills, and likely to be a very reliable person, have good work ethics, because otherwise they can't get through 5 or 6 years of rigorous studying. Also, there are a lot of leadership skills that you picked up on the way. You may be leading a group of PhD students. You might be leading a group of undergrad students. You might be leading a big project that may cross over with other departments or with other schools or with scholars in a different continent. So all those leadership skills, collaboration skills, don't undersell them. Try to kind of turn them into a story, so that your whatever job you're applying for, even though you don't have 3 to 5 years of work experience, you have those skills. When they say 3 to 5 years of work experience as a qualifier, they're not really looking for people who have worked at this position for 5 years. They're more looking for people who have skill set that's equivalent to a 5-year of work experience. So if you can turn yourself into that and sell them, then do it. Don't undersell yourself. Also, we as grad students teach, right? You sometimes teach a course, sometimes or a lot of times you're a TA. So being a mentor to other people is also something important. And I think a lot of the corporate jobs are looking for and appreciating.
That's wonderful to know. Okay, so I think we need to go into Q&A now. And I already saw a question from the chat. I'll just go ahead and read it for you, Jillian.
Yep.
So Deborah from Uganda is asking, what would be the best strategy to sustain oneself in the system where there are even experiences of finances to publish the research reports in journals?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Maybe I have to see the question to understand it better. I don't see it in the chat. I'm sorry, do you mind repeating the question, or maybe whoever asked the question can paraphrase it and kind of break it down so you help me to understand?
Are you able to see what I put in the chat, Jillian?
I have the chat open, but I don't see the question. Oh, what would be the best strategies to sustain oneself in the system where there are even experiences of finances to publish the research reports in journals? Sustain oneself in the system. What do you mean by sustain oneself in the system?
I think they're probably asking where there are, like, there's your consultancy role, but there are, do you also publish research in your role?
I don't, but there are people on my team who do. So our team is just a very small team in a big pond. So my company has 30,000 employees. My team, we are handling a 5-year contract, $30 million 5-year contract. We have about 35 people on the team. There are people who are more technical. So their job is to, pull data from the public data sources and analyze them and just do modeling. They're more technical, and then and it depends on personal interest, right? This person might be more interested in just dealing with numbers and running models and publishing. So we have people on my team who go to maybe 5 or 6 conferences a year and publish in major like public health journals. And we have a small team that's put together to do similar things as PhD students do, like edit, review manuscripts, send them to journals, respond to reviewers' comments, resubmit. We have a small team that's dedicated to that. So there are people on my team who do that. For me, I'm more client facing. So a lot of the work I do, I take their quantitative findings, combined with qualitative data. I write reports. So a lot of the things I write don't get published, but they're delivered to clients. So we even have 2 sets of reports. One is more technical, has language that people who have statistical background can understand, but we also have another version of the same report. We condense a 70-page report to a 4-page, and we call that non-technical. And that is maybe submitted to Congress or shared with other people, like lay people who don't have the knowledge of stats language. So going back to the question, I'm sorry. Going back to the question, I may not be the best person to answer that because I am not actively publishing or going to conferences. So sorry. I don't know if the other panelist is able to join or, have more insight to share for that question. And I apologize to the person who asked this question that I may not have too much insight to share.
It's okay. Is there any other questions from the attendees? I have more questions if you don't.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think I could start. Yeah, so one of the things about being in academia is academic freedom, and you kind of have the power to structure your own time. How have you found working in a corporate setting in terms of how much time you have and being accountable to someone? I know it might be difficult because you haven't worked in academia, so comparing, but just thinking about how much time you have working in that. Is it stressful? Do you think you've got control over time and other things compared to those that you see in academia?
That's a really good question. And I think one of the reasons why I decided to kind of pivot away from academia was, and again, when I say academia, it's purely my personal experience, right? I can't speak for other people. Maybe other people had much better or more enjoyable academia experience. But for me, because I was a PhD student, I wasn't really a professor or anything. So there wasn't too much of a work-life balance, even though, you know, all programs say work-life balance is so important, but I didn't have that. But with this job, I can very responsibly say that there's almost no weekend that I had to take out my laptop to work. I'm approaching 3 years at this company. There's probably one weekend that I ever took out my laptop and I worked 1 hour, and that's it. And I was able to build that 1 hour that I worked. Other than that, my job is pretty much, you know, 8 o'clock I log on, 5 o'clock I log off. I'm able to manage everything I need to do within that work hour. And what I find great is that boundary of personal life and work life is respected by everyone. No one would bother me after 5. If they have a question for me, they can send it out to me, but they don't expect me to answer 8 p.m. that same day. They expect me to see it the next morning. I may see it at night, but I'm not going to respond because that's outside of my work hour. I think this flexibility, use the word flexibility, I think that is protected and granted, at least in my company. Can't speak for all company. I've heard people who work for other corporate, some big corporate, they say they are being stressed out for, you know, time and the workload. Not so much in my case. So I think when you're looking for jobs, definitely, if this is something that you care about, you know, work-life balance or your own autonomy in terms of time management, if that's something you care about, definitely research about that area, that culture about the company that you're applying for. Right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thanks for sharing.
I'm glad to hear that.
We have another question from, I think, Acom, who's from Cameron. So they're asking, apart from sharing experiences here, are there some common or available opportunities for skill-based acquisition? And they also say, do you, Jillian, offer some training opportunities or work-based internships? Yeah, were you offered any work-based internship that can help boost post-PhD career path?
I wasn't offered because I guess when I started to pivot, it was already pretty late in my PhD path. So I only had enough time to, you know, finish my dissertation, and I was already looking for jobs. I didn't have the luxury to look for internship opportunities, but there definitely are things out there. So don't get discouraged just because I didn't get offered. And then I think the question also asked about acquiring skills. There are constantly training opportunities provided in my company. And for my company, each person is offered a fund every year to devote that fund to any type of training you want to do. I think it was 7,500. It's a good amount of money that you can use to pursue. I mean, of course, it needs to be approved by your job lead, your career manager. You can't just take it to a baking class course not, but something related to the job you're doing, and you are funded by your company to do that. So big companies, I know not just my company, a lot of big corporate provide opportunities like that.
Right.
Some of them are free too, like a shorter workshop. It's not like a course, it's like a 3-6 month course. Sometimes it's like a 3-day workshop that corporate provide. There's one that's coming up that's talking about UX research experience that I'm interested in, so I signed up for that, and that's free. It's just a 3-day workshop. It happens 4 to 5, so after your work hour, but not like 8 to 9 or 7 to 8 type of personal time. They don't step into your personal time. They still use your work time, but outside of your main, 9 to 4, that's the main time you devote to your project.
Wonderful. It's wonderful, Jillian. I think we're at time. But yeah, I think a lot of universities offer some similar training as well, and usually we have funds for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jillian. We're basically roasting you here. But thank you everyone for attending. Given, do you have anything additional you want to add?
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Julian for this time that you have set to share your experiences and your thoughts. And again, just to apologize for starting late. And also to our attendees, we do apologize for starting late. Yeah, and just to say thank you very much. And we look forward to more of these. And some of you who will be at the ISSPD biannual meeting. We hope that we can connect. We do have the Early Career Scholar cocktail, meet and interact. So we hope all of you will be there. And just in case you have problems with visa and accommodation, please do reach out so that we can see how we can help in terms of accommodation and visa processing. Yeah. So, and I do want to mention that for accommodation, you need to book as early as possible because it's getting more expensive every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you want to stay far away from the conference. I've seen that as you go far away from the conference center, it gets a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, and I think a lot of places are already all booked. So yeah. Again, thank you everyone for your patience and for sticking around. And I think Patrick will send out the recording to everyone who registered for this webinar. Okay. And thank you again, Jillian.
Yeah, of course.
A good day.
I hope it's helpful.
It's very helpful. All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good luck, everyone.